Now, one of the largest drug makers in the United States could have been stopped from its role in kicking off the opioid crisis had it not been for one man. That man happens to be Rudy Giuliani. Now, there's a great report here in The Guardian that talks about Rudy Giuliani's role in protecting Purdue Pharma. Turns out he was actually one of Purdue's lawyers. Now, of course, there was a federal investigation that happened back in 2007 that had to do with their marketing of OxyContin. It turns out they had been basically lying to people about how OxyContin works and the addictiveness. So look, that's pretty much old news. Let me get into some of the specifics here about what happened. Now, more than a decade ago, Purdue hired Rudy Giuliani, the former New York mayor and now Donald Trump's lawyer, famously, to head off a federal investigation into the company's marketing of this drug. Now, while Giuliani was not able to prevent the criminal conviction over Purdue's fraudulent claims for OxyContin's safety and effectiveness, he was able to reach a deal to avoid a bar on Purdue doing business with the federal government. Now, that would have had big impacts on whether or not Purdue Pharma would be able to make money off selling OxyContin. Now, that would have actually had probably a huge impact in avoiding the opioid epidemic. Now, Giuliani also secured an agreement that greatly restricted further prosecution of the pharmaceutical company and kept its senior executives out of prison. Now, because look, what this was is this was Purdue lying to doctors in order to get more drug sales. In fact, in this article, doctors had noticed after they were successfully pitched this drug that claimed that they lasted longer, and so that you ended up having to take less pills, and that you could get and that you had a lesser chance of getting addicted to this medication. Doctors noticed, well, that's not true. It turns out we're having way more addictions. Well, that's crazy. And they also noticed that people that were already getting addicted to these drugs were now crushing it up and snorting it to be able to get a high sooner, since these were slow release. Now, again, one of the claims was, oh no, people who like to get addicted to drugs, like to do drugs, they're not going to be interested in OxyContin because of its slow release formula. Again, that turned out to be completely untrue. Now, one of the lawyers here, or prosecutors, I should say, who decided to go after Purdue is John Brownlee. Now, Brownlee told The Guardian about what attracted him to this case, and that was, of course, the sales pitch. He said, quote, "This was the magic pill, right? This was a long-acting pill that addicts wouldn't like and you couldn't get dependent on. And that is the magic bullet. The reality," he says later on, "is that this just wasn't true. It was highly deceptive, and then they trained their sales force to go out and push that deception on physicians." Now, during the investigation, of course, they looked through several million of Purdue's internal memos, marketing documents, and notes from sales representatives. But what was a real linchpin in their case against Purdue Pharma was training videos, where representatives acted out selling the drug using false claims. Brownlee said, quote, "This was pushed by the company to be marketed in an illegal way, pushed from the highest levels of the company. That, in my view, made them a criminal enterprise that needed to be dealt with." And now, of course, as soon as Brownlee started looking into the company, they decided to hire Giuliani. Now, Giuliani, of course, had to meet with Brownlee several times. And here's what Brownlee said about the meetings. Quote, "It was basically, hey, man, you need to look at the company differently. All we do is we make a product. And really, we don't really, I mean, we make the product and we distribute it. But we distribute it to the doctors, and the doctors are the ones who make the decision whether to prescribe our drug." Oh, really? Basically, it's not our fault. It's the doctor's fault. But you lied. You lied about what the drug actually does. How can the doctors make an informed decision on whether or not to prescribe this drug to certain people or to anybody if they don't know what the actual effects of the drug are? So, I mean, come on, man. Okay. But Brownlee also tells The Guardian, what were the doctors being told? And this is what he was trying to find out during the investigation. And he said, look, the biggest evidence that we had is the training videos. When I saw that, you now know that this is what the corporation wants the doctors to know. And it just wasn't true. So those videos were incredibly damning. Now, what did Giuliani do? I mean, look, they had a huge, huge piece of evidence. Well, Giuliani worked his Washington friends. Talk about the swamp, right? I thought you were going to drain the swamp. Apparently, in this case, Giuliani loves the swamp. Now, his team, again, worked Washington contacts, and one of them happens to be somebody we're actually familiar with. James Comey. The Purdue lawyers complained that the office of then Deputy Attorney General James Comey that Brownlee was exceeding his legal authority in pursuit of documents from the company. Brownlee said, quote, the defense lawyers contacted Mr. Comey, unbeknownst to us, and said, those guys down there are crazy. Now, Brownlee then went to Washington, of course, to meet with Comey in person. So, what had happened, apparently, according to Comey, and Brownlee, there was a little bit of a mix-up, right? So it turns out the name Purdue Pharmaceuticals was mixed up with Purdue Farms. Now, Purdue Farms is a regional chicken producer, well known for its television ads featuring the owner, Frank Purdue. Now, Mr. Comey, in that meeting, asked Brownlee, why are you prosecuting the chicken guy? He's a chicken guy. Like, why are you coming after him? No. It's not the chicken guy. We're going after this pharmaceutical company that has videos. I mean, this is 100% proof the corporation knew what the drug did and willfully misrepresented that in order to make sales. They lied to doctors, and they created all these different addiction cases, which now continues to this day. So once that was cleared up, Comey was like, oh, yeah, go ahead and have the documents. Well, great. Now, again, those documents, along with the videos, were highly incriminating, which, of course, ultimately led to Purdue accepting a plea deal and admitting to criminal charges of mis-selling OxyContin with the intent to defraud or mislead. Again, in that deal, Giuliani won a couple of concessions. Now, normally corporations with criminal convictions are barred from doing business with the federal government. Well, in this case, they were able to get an exception to that. And why is that important? It's because if you lose your ability to do business with the federal government, then you can't do business with the VA. You can't do business with Medicare or Medicaid patients. So you lose out on a lot of potential business. Not only that, but that reputation also hurts you in the private sector. So they begged Giuliani, oh my God, you can't have us. Or I should say Giuliani was the one that was begging the prosecutors, you can't have Purdue Pharma get kicked out of the feds. I mean, they got to still be able to do business. You can't, completely destroy their business model. That's not fair. And actually, Brownlee kind of agreed. He said, quote, I didn't feel as a lawyer that I could be in a position to bar anyone from getting OxyContin. Faced with that decision, it was just simply not prepared to take it off the market. I didn't feel like that was my role. My role was to address prior criminal conduct, hold them accountable, find them, and make sure the public knew what they did. Now, Brownlee is, while he, of course, doesn't really feel bad about the way that it turned out, as far as his role in it, he's like, hey, man, look, I did what I was supposed to do, and I didn't go any further. My whole point was to just punish them for the things that they did wrong, not take the drug off the market. But one thing that he does feel regret on is the way that the federal regulators actually acted after this, particularly the FDA. Now, they thought that, or Brownlee thought that they would use that criminal conviction to basically look more at Purdue Pharmaceutical and their drugs. But it turns out there was no follow-up at all, and OxyContin continued to be widely prescribed. In the end, Purdue was fined about $640 million. That actually is a slap in the wrist. That's a fraction of their total profits that they made off this drug. And 3 Purdue executives ended up pleading guilty to misdemeanors and were fined about $34.5 million, divided between the 3 of them. Now, Giuliani also, of course, won a concession that immunized Purdue from further prosecution, even though its criminal conduct continued after the period covered by the plea agreement. That prosecution covered its crimes committed up to 2001. However, the misselling went on for years afterwards. But Giuliani was able to negotiate an agreement which immunized the company from further prosecution for its actions up till 2007. Now, interestingly enough, there's a watchdog group named Public Citizen. They said that the company sold nearly $5 billion worth of OxyContin between those 2 dates. So here they are. They were found guilty of misrepresenting this drug, making a whole lot of people addicted to it. And yet, they still made $5 billion between 2001 and 2007. Just off this drug alone. Damn. Look, this is a case of corruption. Look, Brownlee, again, I don't agree with Brownlee's assessment. He said, I think convicting the company, the fines and all that, had its impact. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't think the fines were harsh enough. I think they should have been barred from the market. Again, lie to your consumers and then destroy countless lives and help kick off an opioid epidemic. Those are serious, serious crimes. They got a slap in the wrist, man. And look, he still says, quote, I guess as I sit here now, I'm a little surprised that it's only one of its kind, this prosecution. That with the nature of the abuse and the nature of the problem, that as we sit here, that there's no other out there. Well, why would there be any other out there? I mean, most corporations get away with their crimes. Why? Because they happen to bribe our politicians, who will, as they tried to do with this case, get in the way of convicting these companies for doing things wrong. We live in an oligarchy. You think the FDA is going to pick up the ball? No. Those agencies are also corrupt. And they're filled with people, not of course all of them. There are good people, but look, these good people, these good prosecutors. And look, I'm going to give this guy credit for actually doing what he did, even though I don't think that he went nearly far enough. And I don't think any of these agencies go far enough when they go and try to punish companies. Again, these companies make billions and billions of dollars, and when they have a couple $1 million fine or $100 million fine, or in this case, $640 million, if you're a company making billions and billions of dollars in profit, as a lot of these companies are, well, then that's not really much of a punishment, is it? And unfortunately, this continues to happen. Again, because we live in an oligarchy where corporations basically rule us. Bribery is everywhere, corruption everywhere. So, unfortunately, this is what happens when you live in this kind of country that has been taken over by the swamp. It is the corruption. As for Giuliani, Giuliani loves the corruption. He has no qualms defending known liars and criminals. He defended them then. He's defending them now. So, after all, his position as Donald Trump's lawyer, I guess, is a pretty natural fit. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.